everyone, and welcome to the 10th edition of the Back of the Playbook podcast. Our little pod has hit double figures and is growing up fast. I'm your host, James Nicholson, here with me and my two compadres, Gareth Evans and Stuart Cole. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you. A real week of upsets in the NFL, so plenty to dive into. And I'm excited to get going again.
Not sure I'm looking forward to these prediction results this week.
Yeah, I think we're in for a bit of a shock later on when we get to that. But we are now into week 8 of the NFL season, a season that once it got started has really started to fly by. This week, we saw a few results which we didn't see coming. But one constant, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, is the awfulness of my fantasy team. But before we get to the news, we'll actually start with a shout out to a listener, as when I took a look at our latest stats and scanned through our figures, noticed that there's someone who tunes in every single week from a place none of us have ever been, and that place is Boulder, Colorado. We don't know who you are, but we very much appreciate you sticking with us for the last few months, so do get in touch on one of our social media channels. And if being in Colorado means that you're a Denver Broncos fan, then you've had a great week. Right, to the news. So we'll start with a story we probably covered multiple times before, but the San Francisco 49ers have already had an unreal amount of injuries this season, and they're dealing with 2 more significant losses after finding out that Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle will both miss an extended period of time, and in Kittle's case, possibly the rest of the season. Gareth, how on earth does a team cope with the amount of injuries to key players like the 49ers have to?
Well, you have to pay a good general manager to build you a nice deep roster. I mean, the 49ers are coping with all of these injuries because they're still very much in the playoff hunt in the NFC, which is a testament to John Lynch and his roster building, but also to Kyle Shanahan and his coaching. And it's been seen before that he will put his players into schemes that give them every chance to continue to win games.
Yeah, they're not just a team that plays in the NFC; they play in the NFC West as well, which is the toughest division going. So yeah, they're doing fantastically well. But I just wonder how long they can keep this up, considering the caliber of the players that have gone down this week and the schedule they got coming up. So it's really a make or break. About 4 weeks for them. They've got the Packers this week, and the Saints, then the Rams, who, whilst might not have the best of form, they're a division rival, and then the high flying Bills. So it's really make or break for them, considering the nature of their division and how important wins are going to be for them.
Yeah, I mean, when you look through the players who are either on IR or probably heading to IR, you've got Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurd, George Kittle, Jordan Reed, Nick Bosa, Dee Ford, Solomon Thomas, Richard Sherman. It's not just, people from just any man from the 53. It's star players going out.
Yeah, it's the fact that they're 4-4 as well, which I'm really impressed with. They had an easy run at the start, but they've been losing starters and their backups, and that's where it's really starting to hit them. And you can build as good a roster as you want. You do need to get some luck with the injuries. A lot of sports about luck, and just looks like this year it might not be on their side.
Possibly not. Right, so next bit, we are recording today on trade deadline day, and some deals are already in the books, with more expected to come throughout the night. The trade I'm hoping for the most is the one in the White House, but so far we've seen Los Angeles Chargers sending Desmond King to the Titans, Kiko Alonso to San Francisco in exchange for Quan Alexander, Steelers getting Avery Williamson from the Jets, Carlos Dunlap's gone to Seattle, Cowboys have sent Everson Griffin to Detroit. So some movement already, and there are plenty of rumours going around, including players like Stephon Gilmore to Seattle, AJ Green to New England. I mean, we're all ship on this, but Stuart, I'll start with you. And what's your take on those rumours, and there any you'd like to see take place?
Trades are always an odd one because you get trades for all sorts of reasons, for reducing salary, reducing caps, depending on where teams going in the start of the year. I just want to see what happens to Stephon Gilmore, to be honest. It could be an absolute indication of the end of a dynasty in New England, and see how well he can impact another team. And if he rocks up in Seattle, then you've got him and Jamal Adams on the same secondary, which is quite frankly terrifying.
Yeah.
So it would be a massive sign if he left or stayed in New England. So kind of one for me just to wait and see what happens and what it means to the Patriots going forward if he does leave.
Yeah, for me, I always look at teams that are contending, that need additions. So a team that jumps out at me that needs help is the Tennessee Titans, where in recent weeks they've just been completely savaged by a lack of a pass rush. They picked up Jadeveon Clowney and Vic Beasley Jr. in the offseason, who have combined for 0 sacks on the season. So help there would bolster a team that started the season so hot and in recent weeks have just started this sort of losing skid. And they're just the kind of team that's contending on the, they're tied at the top of the AFC South, and that additional help. I know, being an Atlanta fan, Tack McKinley, young pass rusher, he went on Twitter and quashed rumours of a trade, but a player like him could really help out Tennessee.
He could. I mean, when you look at the rumours, it is all teams that are going for the playoff positions, and you've got Green Bay being linked with Alshon Jeffrey and Will Fuller, which would be interested to see and give Aaron Rodgers a bit more to go for. Hassan Reddick to Pittsburgh, because they've got a bit of a linebacker gap with Devin Bush out of the frame. But yeah, it's always an interesting time. The Panthers, funny enough, being linked with nobody. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and as Stu mentioned with the cap, this is quite a unique season in that the cap is potentially going to go down next year. So teams on and around the limit this year may well have to jettison players for minimal return. If we look at Desmond King getting traded for a 6th-round pick, his talent level is far above that. But the Chargers knew that he would just walk in the off-season if they didn't get something back for him now.
Yeah, traded him so they actually get something rather than nothing. Okay, and then we'll finish off our little bit of news with just some more of that old COVID, with Marlon Humphrey of the Ravens and AJ Dillon from the Packers being the latest to test positive on the playing side, and then John Elway and the CEO of Denver Broncos have also tested positive today. So hopefully they'll be back and fighting fit soon enough.
Has a knock-on effect as well, because Jamal Williams is not going to suit up this weekend for the Packers because he's a close contact of Dillon. So it's just interesting. We said it again. It's Jamal Williams won't play. He hasn't got COVID. He hasn't tested positive for COVID. But that's a knock-on effect. One player takes out 3 players. So it's something teams have got to contend with, and we go back to our deep rosters.
It's a bit of a positive on the COVID front, if there can be such a thing, is that in the sort of previous 8 weeks, the NFL has found no evidence that on-field transmission has occurred. So between either players on the same team or players on opposing teams haven't actually picked it up from each other.
Yeah, that is good. I don't think we've seen much of that in any sport at all.
I was going to say, that's got to be a positive for sport around the world, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So good stuff to see as we in the UK head into lockdown 2. Okay, so with that, let's get back onto the on-field action and dive on into the thrilling weekend of football we had. So we'll kick off with Steelers at the Ravens, a game where the Steelers defense gave up a whole lot of yards but got things right at the key moments in the game, including a pick 6 very early on, and kept themselves undefeated. Gareth, this is what we expected from 2 AFC Titans, isn't it?
This was a proper AFC North ding-dong battle in some pretty chilly weather.
That sun that you said it was going to be, James, I believe.
Would not have looked out of place in January as a playoff matchup, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But as correctly predicted by 2 of us last week, the Steelers triumphed on the strength of their defence, forcing 4 turnovers, but it was a real back and forth game. The Baltimore Ravens actually led 17-7 at halftime, despite that pick six on the opening possession and another turnover by the Ravens offense. And Pittsburgh came back into it. The defense, like you say, just made enough plays, including a last gasp touchdown attempt by Lamar Jackson into the end zone, getting broken up by Minka Fitzpatrick. So it was played right till the end. Either team could have won it. It was a really entertaining watch.
Yeah, I'd say that the game was lost and lost twice by the Ravens for the same reason. So obviously Lamar threw the pick really early on, which ended in a pick six, and that basically, whilst they did eventually get back in front, they put them behind the chains, and then that basically the big drive they had to the end zone where Lamar got stopped on a fourth and 5, something like that. They only ran the ball on that drive. Every play on that drive was a run, and it felt to me like a team which hasn't necessarily done as well as it expected to do. Lost the big game quite heavily to Kansas City, and then came up against another big AFC match here for the Steelers. They went back to what they knew. A bit like you can end up doing on a computer game on Madden. Just do what you know and just keep doing it. And the Steelers knew it was coming eventually. And so I think the Ravens lost because they weren't quite on all cylinders as they were last year. And when you're playing in such a high level division or conference match like this one, the lack of form they've had so far this year in the biggest games slightly caught them out.
Do you think it's a problem for this game, or do you think it's becoming a more persistent problem for the Ravens?
I think it's becoming more consistent. I genuinely do.
So their two losses this season have been against playoff teams, the Chiefs and the Steelers. They've also never won a playoff game with Lamar Jackson under center. You can probably rule out his debut game when he wasn't even the starting quarterback coming into the season. But last year they got one and done, as the saying goes, in the playoffs. And I just wonder if when they get down against these teams with a high caliber defense, whether that run only approach that you say they chose to take, but did they have to take because Jackson wasn't firing in the passing game?
Yeah, that's what I think. That's why I think I said that. I think that the early negative play they had on the passing game, it meant that when they needed to perform, they went to what they knew. They're excellent at it, and they've been excellent at it for a year. But when you're playing an equally excellent defense, you need a bit of variety. And it just looked like the Steelers knew they were going to give up all the yards down the field, but they knew that they'd eventually keep them out. And I don't think the reaction from Mike Tomlin, he knew exactly what was coming. Everybody knew exactly what was coming. I think the commentators even said Lamar's going to run this. And of course, most of the time he gets through. But that's two big games they've played this year where they've come up short, and they need to make sure it doesn't start to become a trend.
It does, and one key part of this game is that the Ravens lost Ronnie Stanley for the season with a nasty ankle injury. So, I mean, that's not going to make things better for them, especially when they come up against those top-tier defenses.
No, and on Ronnie Stanley, he signed his 5-year contract extension in the week leading up to this game. So
2 days before.
That's why you look at the situation that Dak Prescott's in, and this is why players are so desperate to get or not desperate, but feel like they are entitled, and I believe they are entitled, as they put their careers on the line every Sunday.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So not pretty for Pittsburgh, but we look forward to the rematch, and that one in just 3 weeks' time on Thanksgiving. So you can all watch that while you tuck into your turkey. Right. Next game, Rams at the Dolphins. I called this one intriguing because of it being Tua's first start, but it was a game won by Brian Flores' or Adam Gase, as Gareth likes to call him. Excellent coaching.
I will never, ever make that error again. I apologise on behalf of myself to Brian Flores for ever comparing him with Adam Gase, because this was, as I attempted to say last week but got his name wrong, exactly the sort of decision-making that meant starting Tua was the right call. There's obviously no way he would have predicted that the Rams would have had 4 turnovers in the first half and get into a 28-7 hole with Tua only having 34 passing yards. But that's what they had. And the Rams offensively just looked completely inept for the majority of the game. They had a 7-drive sequence that went punt, interception, punt, fumble returned 78 yards for a touchdown, punt returned 88 yards for a touchdown, interception, fumble returned to the 1-yard line. So when you're able to do that to a team, you don't need your quarterback to be doing very much at all.
I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest. This game is exactly how we said it was going to go. The quarterback was going to fumble the ball, and the team was going to turn the ball over to the big defense. Unfortunately, it was the Rams doing it, and not the Dolphins. So, we knew that Tua was going to get hit by Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald probably knew it was going to happen all week, and that happened early on, and they got the fumble.
Second snap of the game, Tua fumbled it, and we all thought, yeah, this is what meant to happen.
It was always going to happen because it was so scripted. But if you got 6 first half turnovers in this game, 4 of them on the Rams, 3 punts, like you said, you're just not winning the game if you're doing that. Tua went 12 passes, 22 attempts, 93 yards and a touchdown. He won 28-17. If that's not a good debut, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, perfectly solid. And we say about Aaron Donald, the defense, but Tua did only get sacked once and only gave up 1 turnover. So he fared a lot better than Goff did.
But then the Dolphins only managed 145
They did.
offensive yards.
That's because the defense was on the field a lot because the Rams kept giving it back to him.
The Rams got 471 yards and still lost the game.
Yeah, they managed to get all those yards, but only scored 3 points in the second quarter and none in the third as well.
That's what happens when you turn the ball over.
Yep. Yeah. Not a pretty day at the office for the Rams, but a nice one for Tua to start. Okay, to another divisional game now. So we have the NFC West and the 49ers at the Seahawks. A scoreline that flattered the 49ers thanks to Nick Mullins' fourth quarter point splits. The Seahawks took another division game where we saw DK Metcalf reigning supreme and showing what an incredible player he is.
Best receiver in the league?
Yeah, he definitely is at the moment. Stu, how did it go?
Nothing like we thought was going to happen. It was over pretty much halfway through the second half. It was a really good defensive start from both teams. Looked like it was going to be really close. Both teams putting pressure on, and pretty much the 49ers seemed to kind of implode after they survived a fumble when Seattle recovered it out of bounds and then just threw it back to them on the next play. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf started to put it together, but it all just kind of slipped away from the 49ers. That's why I think this could be a bit of a catalyst for the rest of their season. They took the injuries. The scoreboard was very pretty to them, as you mentioned. Nick Mullins quite easy to put up a lot of points when Seattle's just going to give you those yards because you're so far ahead. It was 37 at one point and at 37-27.
Yep.
Yeah, it just kind of what looked like a really close game in the first quarter just kind of subsided away from the 49ers, and that was due to the quality of the Seahawks.
This was almost the opposite of the AFC North Steelers-Ravens battle that went to the wire. We had the same hopes about this game. We all predicted that it would be decided by 3 points. You two went for the 49ers, but I trumped with the Seahawks. And it just didn't. It just fizzled out. And whether that was because Garoppolo and Kittle went down for the Niners, I don't think it is, because they only had 126 yards in the first half when those two were on the field for most of it.
Yeah, Garoppolo was not... Yeah, after we thought, right, he's back in form, he then was very iffy again, and those questions have started again. Obviously now he'll sort of, he'll go away on his injury with his ankle problem. But when Nick Mullins comes in and does that, I mean, is it something they have to look at?
No, I don't think it's that. I think the questions are there because this is a team which has been running on the edge all season. It's lost half of its starting roster and has been stringing together games through good coaching, through luck, through all sorts of various things, and also through good play when they've been able to get players on the field. But
they've won some games through playing the NFC West.
And that as well, being one of the better teams in New York at the moment. But it's just, you can't keep going forever, and that's why I think the next 4 weeks is so crucial for them, because when you're playing these high-caliber teams like the Seahawks, they play them every year, and it usually comes down to the 1 yard line. It did last year. It's going to crack at some point, and I feel like the 49ers this season could just be at that tipping point just because of everything that they've gone through so far. At some point it cracks, and this game looked like it could have been it.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be too much for them this season with those injuries they've got. I mean, they've done the best they can, but like you said, there's just a point where it breaks, and then they kind of will just trickle away for the rest of the season. And okay, our final deep dive, Colts at the Lions in a bit of a points fest. We had another slow start from the Colts, but they came into life in the second quarter and blew Detroit away with 20 unanswered points. Not really any questions about Philip Rivers this week, as they put the Lions away, and Darius Leonard being back really helped their defense. So, Gareth, what did you make of that?
Darius Leonard was huge for them. The Lions had a chance in the third quarter to drive and take the lead. Strip sack from Darius Leonard gave Philip Rivers the ball back. They went and scored a touchdown. Then on the next possession, that defense got a pick six, and all of a sudden you had a 20-14 scoreline with the Lions in possession to take the lead. Went to 35-14 in less than 4 minutes of game time, and that was it. That was game over.
Yeah, you said slow start. Actually, the Lions have scored first in every one of their games this year, James. So it's kind of business as usual, really, and then they lost. So yeah, just another. They're a highlights team, the Colts. I feel they put up all these plays. They score quickly.
I would say they're a positive and negative highlights team.
Yeah, I want to see them prove that they can do a Steelers, where they go into Baltimore, they play hard, they eventually get over the line, and you can see how they're doing it. Sometimes you can't really see how the Colts are doing it. They just go down points and they go back up points, and I'd like to see him maybe score a few less points, but just be better as an all-round team, because at the moment I'm not sure I can see them winning too many playoff games just because of how up and down they are, really.
You don't feel like they're a grind-it-out team.
No, you feel like they're a team which could easily just subside against in a big high-pressure game, or they could easily absolutely blow it away. But I don't think that's how you win a Super Bowl.
That is very Philip Rivers, though. He makes those highlight throws, but he will also make some really daft decisions that leave you scratching your head as to why all of a sudden the ball is in the defender's hand and they're going the other way.
It is, but a good week for Indianapolis on the whole, and we'll get to them in our previews. But for now, let's run through the rest of the scores. So we opened on Thursday Night Football with the Falcons Panthers, and the Falcons did something they haven't done for a few weeks, Gareth.
I don't know what you mean, James. What happened on Thursday? I must have missed that one.
Yes, unfortunately the Falcons won 25-17 after a filthy hit to Teddy Bridgewater out.
I don't think that was what won the game for the Falcons.
No, what won the game for the Falcons was they finally learnt that actually you cannot let the other team score at the end of the game.
Yes, a positive in the week for Atlanta. We then went on to Sunday, so as we said, we've had the Steelers beating the Ravens 28-24, Rams 17, Dolphins 28, Jets 9, Chiefs 35. I mean, that was a straightforward one, wasn't it?
Good bit of scrimmage in pads, that.
Yeah. So we then had the Vikings pulling out a surprise and beating the Packers 28-22.
Yeah, so wasn't this game only Dalvin Cook scoring for the Vikings and only Devontae Adams scoring for the Packers?
Yeah, and I had one of those on my fantasy team starting. Stu, how about you?
I had one of them on my bench, Dalvin Cook. Unfortunately for James, his team is terrible, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, less said about my.
That was an interesting game because we might have picked that game going the way of the Vikings at the start of the season when we all predicted the Vikings were going to win the NFC North. But based on what the form book had shown this season, there was no way you were going to pull that result out.
No, just their second win of the season. Colts 41, Lions 21. Then a bit of a low-scoring one in iffy weather conditions. The Raiders 16, Browns 6.
Iffy weather conditions, like good luck kickers. Twice. Perfect kicks down the middle and just took off to the left. That's why it was such a low-scoring game. It wasn't the highest quality, but when you're in those conditions, it's all about getting the win.
Yeah, only one play over 20 yards in the entire game. Both teams combined that one, but
it was also much harder to kick at one end than the other, so it had a big impact on the game of depending on how you got down the field at which end of the field, and Raiders came out on top.
Yeah, Raiders established a run game and won tough, which is something that they haven't done in previous years, and makes them a playoff team, or makes them a playoff contender.
It does indeed. A playoff contender who had another surprise loss. Titans 20, Bengals 31.
Big statement game for Joe Burrow, and it looks as though the Bengals have finally worked out that if you let your quarterback stand upright, he might win you a game. The first week this season, he didn't get sacked a single time, after being the most sacked quarterback in the league in the first 7 weeks. And interestingly, none of the Bengals O-line who started in week 1 played in this game, so maybe they found a unit that works together.
That's right, quite possibly. We then had the Patriots go down to the Bills 21-24, which was a bit of a statement game for the Bills, get one over their old rivals.
Yeah, for me, this wasn't a game about the 2020 Buffalo Bills playing the 2020 Patriots. This was the Bills franchise playing the Patriots, and they had been dominated by the Patriots for so long. But now they got a chance to win this division for the first time since 1995. In these games, it is irrelevant how well you play. This is all about winning, and that's why it came down to pretty much the last play, with where Cam fumbled it, got the ball knocked out of his hands. Just because the Bills had all that history against them, it's such a huge game. All they wanted was a win. Doesn't matter how they got it. Move on.
Yeah, you could see they had such a weight on their backs about, oh my goodness, this is the New England Patriots, and that might be the springboard they need to go back, because that Josh Allen for MVP talk has certainly gone out the window at the moment.
Yeah, this is a total outlier in their season. This was all about winning, and it's your Bill Belichick on the side, New England Patriots. Who cares how you win? And you can see it. It's one of those things where history plays a massive effect in sport.
Yep, and the conversations are still going over who was the most important person to the Patriots. Was it Belichick or was it Brady? And everything is now pointing in Brady's direction.
Do you want some numbers for that?
Go on then.
Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, 224 wins, 66 losses. With anybody else starting at quarterback, he has got 51 wins and 66 losses.
Ooh. It's all Brady.
Trevor Lawrence, the current rate, so we're all good.
Next game, Chargers 30, Broncos 31. Pleasing our fan in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, unless he's moved there from LA. Well, Chargers have the distinction of being the first team in NFL history to blow a 16-point lead in 4 consecutive games.
I mean, Atlanta's not got that.
I know, I was amazed. But then I look back and Atlanta don't get a 16-point lead very often.
Yeah, that was... Drew Lock reminded people what he can do. We then had the 49ers, Seahawks, said 27-37. Saints, Bears, one that went to overtime. The Saints coming out the victors 26-23.
God, if I played on that Bears defence, I'd be so annoyed.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? They're such a good defense, but you can only defend so long against a Hall of Fame quarterback. And the Bears offense, this is a team game. You've got to help your other side of the ball out, because they're doing a sterling effort, but you just can't keep this up. So yeah.
At this rate, they might as well put Roquan Smith at quarterback and see how it goes. Like Foles or Trubisky, neither of them are offering enough. Nothing. They don't even have to be. They don't even have to be top 10. They just have to be top 20, and they're just not.
No, letting the team down at the moment. We then went to the Cowboys and Eagles, with the Eagles coming out 23-9 over that just torn apart Cowboys team with their terrible defense.
This was not a game that they were going to put on the advertising poster for the NFL.
No, it was not the highest in quality by a long stretch of the imagination.
I think it just sums up that division.
Yeah, it's at least the poster boy for the NFC East. We then finished off with last night's game. Buccaneers 25, New York Giants 23, in a game which had a bit of controversy at the end with a defensive pass interference call.
Yes, I suppose it did, but really there were calls earlier in the game that were equally as controversial that should have gone the other way, and then it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, these things balance themselves.
Yeah, I don't think that had too much of an actual impact on the game overall. It was what won the game for the Bucks was they got a 2-minute drill in just before the half to get a field goal. Really important play. And that basically ended up being the difference. And yeah, the Bucks just they look like a team to me that kind of believes its own press, and it knows when it has to play well and knows when it's expected to win, and they sometimes can't quite put up the points in those lower pressure games.
Yeah.
So they did enough to win, and I don't think it's really indicative of them.
Classic case of playing down to your opponent, I think.
Yeah,
indeed. So that brings us to the end of those the results. So good, bad, and ugly this week. I know ugly was probably quite an easy one. Not sure we have any differences, but Javon Wims with his punching outbreak and getting banned for 2 games, which they're somehow appealing.
Well, so he's claiming he got spat at, so that's why he then went on his quite ineffective roundhouse punch spree.
Yeah, the thing that I took from it, I quite enjoyed how the referee described it. Usually these players, they say they've been ejected, but I believe the words was he's disqualified himself from the game.
Yes,
exactly what
that.
he did. So it's like, just ridiculous.
Cool.
Interestingly, it's the same Saints cornerback that Michael Thomas punched in practice, and is the reason he's not playing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
So maybe it's just his face.
Maybe, yeah. It doesn't not fit anywhere, apparently. How about good this week? What have you guys got?
So I'm going to jump in here before Gareth nicks it, because he nicked one of mine last week, probably won't. I find it's easy to pick on Cam Newton with his fumble, but I'm actually going to give it to the defensive player. Justin Zimmer punched that ball out. Like I said, there was massive pressure on the Bills in that game, and they had one chance to win it, and he took it. And good, great defensive play.
Yeah, there was some good defensive plays to win games. You had Antoine Winfield Jr. last night breaking up that pass on the 2-point conversion to get that tied up. As we talked about, Minka Fitzpatrick broke up Lamar Jackson's pass in the end zone to potentially win that game for the Steelers. But I'm going to go for Patrick Mahomes, quite an easy player to find some good things about. But he had more touchdown passes on Sunday against the Jets than the Jets have had all season. And he had 5 passes of more than 25 yards to 4 different receivers. And 4 of them went for touchdowns, which is pretty good going.
And that's why he's elite.
That's why that offense is a joke.
Yes. For me, I'm going to go with a special teams play, and that was Miami's Jakeem Grant, breaking the team's record with an 88-yard punt return. I think it was the first punt return touchdown this season.
It was, yeah.
So I'm going to go with him. Bad because it impacted my fantasy team. Well, I mean, most of my players did, but Carson Wentz, that Cowboys defense should have been absolutely put away, and he had a completely erratic game and let my fantasy team down. So he goes in my bad.
So I'm going to say the bad is you picking Carson Wentz for your fantasy team. But my one, I've already mentioned it, Jimmy Garoppolo. You survived a forced fumble with the man going out of bounds. So you then lob it back to them on the next play. Don't do it.
He was very determined to give the ball away.
Yeah, it was just like, we don't want this thing. Like, the game's close and you're actually playing pretty well, and it's momentum killers. I hate them.
So before we move on to the preview section, who are you going to put at quarterback in your fantasy team this week, James? I might need to change my prediction if they're going to do terribly.
Well, I've got Lamar Jackson on the bench.
Oh, there you go.
So it could be Lamar.
Yeah, I'm also going offensively for my bad, and I'm putting the Rams offense in there. 4 turnovers in the first half, most turnovers by a team in a half this season. Probably the most disappointing team of the weekend for me.
Yeah, fair enough. So, as you mentioned, let's go into the previews and look ahead to the action that's coming up. We'll start with 2 5-2 teams coming together as the playoff picture starts to develop, with the Ravens going to the Colts. Ravens coming off a loss and the Colts off a win. So, Gareth, how do you think it's going to go?
So this is a battle of two defenses that are better than their opposing offenses right now. Both the Colts and the Ravens will fancy their chances defensively this week. I think the Ravens will fancy getting some turnovers out of Phillip Rivers, and with Darius Leonard back at middle linebacker for the Colts, you really think that they'll be fancying bottling up Lamar Jackson in that run game. And the Colts and everyone in the league knows the recipe to beat Baltimore, and that is to make Lamar Jackson do it with his arm and not his legs, or Mark Ingram's legs, or Gus Edwards' legs, or whoever they're rolling out, J.K. Dobbins.
In terms of defense against the rush, in terms of yards, what team is the best in the league? It is the Colts.
Yes, you say that. The Steelers were pretty good last week until Baltimore rolled into town and gave up 265 of them.
But when it mattered, they got it done. I think Ravens are a bit of a one-trick pony at the moment. They're a bit low on confidence, I feel, in terms of their overall game plan. And for me, that's why I'm going the Colts here.
How many points do you reckon the Colts will win by before I say mine?
I'm going Colts by 6. I just think this is two teams. Colts are on a bit of a roll. And yeah, I just feel like they know exactly what the Ravens are going to do. It could backfire on me, and the Ravens could absolutely stick it to them. But I can just see it being a Colts win this week.
Yeah, same for me. I've gone Colts by 7. I just think that the potential is there with the Ravens to get back to that MVP Lamar Jackson that they were showing last season. But something's just not quite there. I think maybe teams have worked out a little bit more how to play against that scheme, having had some more time over the off-season to scheme for it. Darius Leonard being back, I think, is huge for this game. I think that might have flipped my prediction if he'd not been back. So I'm going Colts by 7.
Yeah, this is the perfect time of the year for the Ravens to be doing this, though, because they've got enough time to sort this out for the playoffs. And if they'd have been doing this later, pushing into December, it might have stuck what they're doing. But I got a feeling this is going to be a blip for them. But right now, I think this is a really good time for the Colts to be playing them.
So yeah, I was going to say that what you mentioned there, Gareth, about Darius Leonard was the one that flipped it for me as well. So I make it a clean sweep for the Colts across the three of us, also by 7. I just have that same feeling about the Ravens at the moment. I don't have full confidence in them, and they've got rolling into another good defense. I'm back in Indianapolis.
But then equally, we could be sitting here looking stupid because this is the game and they pick it up.
They're not playing badly. They're just not playing at their highest levels. And it's a big difference when you say not got confidence in the Ravens. I absolutely agree with you, James. It's just that what we're used to seeing from them isn't quite there at the moment. It's going to be there, but I just think right now this could be a perfect storm for the Colts.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Right, Seahawks at Bills. The Bills beat the Patriots last week, which we've mentioned, and could shape that division for seasons to come. Well, the Seahawks also had a divisional win, so possibly a close one here. Stu, who notches up the W for you?
I like the Bills. Like I said, big emotional win for them last week. There was so much history going against them, and they came out on top. And the Seahawks against the 49ers, I know it was Nick Mullins on the field, but they did their same thing where they gave up plays towards the end of the game. They were giving up yards, and they did that. They've done that pretty much every game they've had this year, and doing that against Josh Allen. I just think the Bills are going to be rolling. They're going to be really, really confident for this one. I can see it being another classic Seahawks close one. But Allen came back right at the end of the game at the start of the year. I can see him doing it again. Bills by 3.
Interesting. I am going to keep with the Seahawks here. Yes, they gave up yards in garbage time and points to the 49ers, but I just feel like that game had gone, and we've seen it a few times this season with teams just checking out late and games closing up. I mean, Atlanta tend to do it a bit too early, but there we go. And I just think that DK Metcalf is just such a nightmare matchup right now for teams. And Russell Wilson is able to find him the ball. And the Seahawks just look like one of the best teams in the NFL. And I don't think that Buffalo are frankly. And I think that I'm going the other way. I've got Seahawks by 3.
So I'm joining Stu. I've also so this takes our predictions down. I'm going.
Is that because you've got Buffalo players in your fantasy team?
Not yet, but there's always a chance. I think Josh Allen is out there available. Buffalo by 3 for me as well. It's a harder game to predict and a harder game, I think, for the Seahawks facing a fully fit team with that Bills defense. I'm going to go with Buffalo.
Yeah, the Bills still give up nearly 25 points a game, and then you've got Seattle rolling in.
It's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, it could be really this could be 37, 34 type game.
As long as it's in Buffalo's favour, I don't mind. Right, talking of the 49ers, who we were just mentioned there, they are hosting the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers riding into town, ready to face a team that seem to have more players in the physio room than on the roster at the moment. Gareth, this can only go the Packers' way, can't it?
Well, it's not only the 49ers who've got their injury problems. There's Aaron Jones, running back, Alan Lazard, wide receiver, and David Bakhtiari, O-lineman, who are all long-term injury problems for Green Bay. But this is just a nightmare scenario for the 49ers to lose your starting quarterback and probably the second best tight end in the league, and then have a short week, have to go and play this game on a Thursday night against another playoff contending team who you met in the NFC Championship game last season. And you say, if you lose your starting quarterback, fine, let's hit the run game.
Yeah,
Raheem Mostert's out injured.
This is the problem. It's the rest of the roster. I think they could actually have coped with Garoppolo going down if they'd have had Kittle, if they'd have had Mostert, if they'd have been able to go full guns blazing on all these different wide receiver run plays that they got going. They're just so many men down. Jordan Reed, backup tight end, down. They're playing the Packers, who bounced back after losses this year, and they're going to do it again. I really wish the 49ers had at least half of these players missing back on their team. Even if they had Nick Bosa, for example, they would be able to put pressure on Rodgers, and then you could actually see an angle into them winning. I can only see this being a loss for the 49ers just because of the position that they've found themselves in through injuries. And therefore, that's Packers by 14 for me. We've seen what Kyle Shanahan's been able to do with a limited roster this season. I just think he's at the point where he's got too many men missing now.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't get round to my prediction, but I've got Packers by 12. The recipe is there for the 49ers to win by beating them up, by running the ball hard. That's what teams have done to them, the Packers this season. I just don't. The 49ers are just so injured. Short week, nightmare. I think, Packers by 12.
The one benefit they've got is that because it's short week, I feel like they're just going to hit the run game and just go for it as hard as they can. I just don't think over the course of 60 minutes it'll be enough.
But they haven't got the players to implement that game plan to the same level that they did in the NFC Championship game.
No, it's same for me. The 49ers, it's just too many injuries now. And after the Packers' surprising loss last week, they'll want to put it right. They do have a tendency to cave to pressure from competitive teams. But I don't know how competitive the 49ers will be with so many players missing, so it's a Packers by 10 for me. So another divisional game. They're all popping up. Saints at the Bucks. The two leaders in the NFC South clash in Tampa Bay. Both teams have only lost twice this season, so Stu, who is taking their third loss here?
This game is a commentator's dream, isn't it? They're just going to be talking about... if it's a shootout, who's breaking the record for the total number of touchdowns continuously between Brady and Breeze. I said it earlier. I think the Bucks play better against a team when they think it's going to be hard. They just feel like that sort of team to me. That when they know they got up their game, they can do it. They struggled against the Giants. They lost to the Bears, both teams that they would have expected to have probably beaten quite easily. They're both two very good rush defenses. I can just see Brady with the hot hand on this one. He's putting up some yards. He's putting up touchdowns. I'm just backing Tom here because I feel like they're more of a team which knows exactly what they're doing. They're all in this year. They've gelled. And obviously the Saints beat them week 1 when they hadn't gelled. So for me, I'm going to go Brady's revenge, Bucks by 6.
Exactly the same for me, Bucks by 6. I just think they have the edge in both offense and defense. Frankly, I think Brady's got, or the Bucks with Brady have a more downfield passing attack than Breeze can offer with the Saints. That Bucks defense is one of the best units in the league. The Saints are certainly not. And also, this is a huge game for the Bucks. They have to win this game to prevent the Saints having a season sweep of them, and when that comes down to playoff positioning.
Yeah, in I guess another weird one. Like I also put the Bucks by 6 in this. Tampa have got their offense going. Brady and Gronk in the last couple of weeks are starting to link up more, and with their top defense, I think their home team, they take the win. They put the statement out there with Brady topping Breeze, combine the two there. That'd be one amazing quarterback. But yeah,
quite an old quarterback.
No mobility.
No mobility. Age about 100. But yeah, Tampa for me too. So let's go through the rest of the week's fixtures. Slightly less exciting one to start with. The New York Giants traveling to Washington football team. Two of the worst teams in football, I guess, meet up. But the Giants have started to show some signs of life, and they have a bit of an underrated defense. So I'm going for New York, and I'm going for them with a 10-point win over Washington.
Are you going to see 10 points in this game?
I hope so.
The Giants' defense is one of the more underrated units in the league. However, their offense is not. Washington also have a sort of sneaky good defense. Daniel Jones has just shown a tendency to hang on to the ball too long, so I quite fancy that Washington defensive line to get home a few times. I'm taking Washington by 3.
Oh, well, I'm going to go on the James Nichols side of the argument here and back the Giants as well. I think Giants have been a bit sneaky good in the last couple of weeks, despite losing. Sneaky good in Giants terms, let's say it like that. Admittedly, I don't think the Bucks were on it, but they did go with them. And I can just see there being a divisional game and the Giants just clicking a little more on offense, I'm going to say. So, Giants by 6.
Fair. Bears at the Titans. So you've got a Titans team who put in an un-Titans-like performance last week. Out to win against the stodgy old Bears offense, minus one receiver, thanks to his punchy outburst. I've got the Titans coming back in this one, finding their feet again and winning by 7.
Yeah, for me, the Titans look pretty knackered the last couple of weeks. Everything catching up with them, short weeks, etc., etc. However, I could just see this being a pretty familiar pattern for a Titans game. Not doing a lot first half, and up against that Bears defense, good defense, but their offense not doing enough and running out of gas on the Bears side of it when Derrick Henry's coming downhill in the second half, and therefore in probably not a classic match, Titans by 3.
Well, I'm either going to have a really good or really bad. I just really want to pick the Bears here. I don't like what Tennessee have been putting out on offense, particularly against the Bengals this past week. All that signs that Tennessee could sort of bottle up what they had in the playoffs last season and roll with it for an entire season, that's just faded completely. They've just not had that same power from Derrick Henry or finesse from Ryan Tannehill that they were showing. This Bears defense is just so good. It's just going to keep the Bears in every single game this season. And I just feel like this is a game where Nick Foles gets one of his streaky hot games, and they actually put some points together, and they're going to sneak this one by 2 points.
Ooh, interesting.
Well, I was really struggling on this one, purely because of all of the points that Gareth just said. I've got down here: the Bears are 5-3, the Titans are 5-2. They're two very similar teams. There was that little bit that the Titans did a few weeks ago where they got back into some games in the fourth quarter. I could just see a little bit more winning edge in them. I know they've lost the last two. I think they might just stop the rot, but I cannot see this being a highlights game. I think it's just going to be a one where it's just about winning for either team. But if the Bears win, they'll be 6-3, and we said it about Chicago. They're somehow doing it, and that's because of their defense.
It is indeed. Lions at Vikings. The Lions are unpredictable at the moment because they show flashes of brilliance and then flashes of ineptitude. Vikings powered to a win last weekend that we didn't see coming, and I think they are going to do it again here. So Vikings to get their third win of the season and take a 10-point win.
Exactly the same for me. Matthew Stafford's working with a pretty shoddy cast at the moment, unfortunately for him. Kenny Golladay keeps getting down, injured. Vikings by 10.
I just looked at how many rush touchdowns the Lions given up. It's 14. And who was on 14 around them? The Chargers, the Giants, the Jags, and the Jets with 15. Not a pretty good cast to be around when you're playing Dalvin Cook. So, yeah, pretty easy for me. Vikings by 6.
Clean sweep. Panthers at Chiefs. As much as I'd like to predict an upset here, this young Panthers defense isn't going to be able to cope with Mahomes and co. Christian McCaffrey may be back. He has practiced more this week, which will help on the offensive side of the ball, but it's not going to be enough. Chiefs by 14.
I'm quite interested to see this one, just because Kansas City hasn't necessarily put in these monster games back to back. Yes, they played the Jets this week. Not sure it counted as a match, because as Gareth said, it was quite a lot more like organised practice with some refs. But I can still see a Kansas City win. I just can't. I might see it might not be the walkover that you might be thinking there, James. So I've just gone Chiefs by 6.
Kansas by 10 for me. They just have too much on offense for the Panthers, who started hot but have actually slipped off.
Tailed off a bit, yeah.
Tailed off a bit in recent weeks, particularly on the defensive side.
Yep, so that's not unexpected predictions. Maybe that'll be one of those ones that surprises us next week. Be nice.
I don't think it will. I just think the game might be closer than everybody's expecting it to be.
I'll take it. Texans at the Jaguars. No Gardner Minshew this week, which puts the Jags on the back foot. And for me, gives them another loss. I've got the Texans coming in for this one and taking this one by 10.
Yeah, dead simple for me. No Gardner Minshew, no winning. Texans by 6.
I mean, with Gardner Minshew, no winning for Jacksonville really this season. So without him, God knows. Texans by 10.
Another clean sweep. Broncos at Falcons. Broncos stormed back to win last week with an inspired Drew Lock. Reminded people that he's also a great young quarterback, not being talked about. And though the Falcons won last week, I don't have it happening again here, and I'm going to go for the Broncos by 7.
Yeah, I like this Broncos defense. They've been going under the radar. They're getting into some close games with some big teams and not giving up as much as people were expecting, particularly when Locke was out injured. And yeah, same principle for me with Locke back. I can see the Broncos getting the edge over Atlanta here. Broncos by 3.
I'm doing it
again. I knew he's done it again.
I'm doing it again. I've been suckered in. What did you call it last week, Stu? Fans fallacy?
The fan fallacy. I absolutely love it.
I'm all in. I'm drowning in it. I've got Falcons by 3. Yes, the Broncos did. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Yes, the Broncos did come back and win, but it's a team that likes to give away leads. They only showed that offense that people talked about them having in one quarter. Like for 3 quarters, they were pretty inept last week against the Chargers. And there's been some marginal defensive improvements for Atlanta, so I'm having them getting out a lead and then actually managing to stick it out and winning by 3.
What swung this for me was that Atlanta are playing in Atlanta, and after everything they've been through this year, I think they're under quite a lot of pressure, and I just can't see them doing this one. They got a nice away win this week, but I love the fans' fallacy, and I hope it's going to pay off for me.
Yeah, it was already suckered me in once, and you saw what happened, Gareth, so more for you. Raiders at the Chargers. Justin Herbert, he put up the stats and the Chargers lost last week whilst the Raiders ground out that win against the Browns. Could be a bit of a topsy-turvy one and close, but I'm actually going to go for the Chargers by 3.
So a little stat on Justin Herbert. He is the only player in NFL history to, in his first 6 starts, top 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. So he is arguably in that offensive rookie of the year conversation, if not leading it. I just don't like the way the Chargers keep losing close games. Anthony Lynn has got a really poor record as Chargers head coach of games decided by less than a score. And I think this is one of those games again where it's going to be tight. Both teams will keep it close, and I think the Raiders come out on top by 3.
Yeah, that's pretty much where my thoughts were. Obviously, they're not going to get a weather-affected game this week, considering the stadium. But as much as Herbert is dishing out the points, they are still losing these games. And the Raiders, for all of their faults, have been winning some close ones. So that was pretty much what swung it for me. Because Raiders by 3, Vegas to do it again.
Look, if Las Vegas want to be a playoff contender, they win this game.
They have to. Absolutely have to. One playoff team then against a very much not playoff team, Steelers at the Cowboys. Despite having an offense that's slow to get going at times, the Steelers playing the Cowboys is a good game to get into the groove early doors. Andy Dalton may be back for Dallas, but won't make a blind bit of difference as the undefeated Steelers march on with a 21-point win.
There's no debate. It's a Steelers win, 17.
I've gone 17 as well. Next game.
Sneaky good game here, possibly. Dolphins at Cardinals. Interesting with the 2 young quarterbacks and 2 good coaches. A hard one to possibly call. Could be a bit of a shootout, but I'm going to side with Arizona. Because you can scheme all you want for Kyler Murray, but he has the ability to change things on a whim. So I'm going for the Cardinals to take that one by 7.
Different picture for Tua this week. That sneakily good Cardinals secondary. I don't think the Cards are going to turn it over as much as the Rams did and give you quite a pretty armchair ride through the game. And for me, I'm just going to back the young quarterback who's got more experience, and Kyler Murray, Cards by 10.
I'm also going Cardinals here. Like you say, I don't think Tua will have quite the armchair ride of last week, and so many points handed to Miami on a plate, and I think Arizona win this by 7. But this is a really good measuring stick for both teams. Yeah. We will see how good the Cardinals are and how good the Dolphins are this week.
We will, and then we finish with what could possibly be the worst game of the weekend, with the Patriots going to the Jets. The Patriots are on their first 4-game losing streak since 2002, which is quite the length of time. I think it comes to an end here, despite their shredded wide receiver core. It could be close, though. So I think Patriots to take it, but just by the 1 touchdown, by 7.
Patriots by 3 for me. Cam Newton, since returning from COVID, 0 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions, 3 fumbles, one of which he lost, and an 0-3 winning or losing record.
That's kind of what those stats do to you. Those aren't winning stats, are they?
It's not been pretty, but then you look at the Patriots roster and the other offensive starters consist of 1 third rounder, 1 6th rounder, 1 7th rounder, and 6 undrafted free agents. That's who he's trying to get the ball to. Like, we talk about roster depth. It's not here. And maybe it is Brady that was been covering that up for all these years. But yeah, it's a terrible game. But you have to fancy Bill Belichick to outcoach Adam Gase at the very least.
I think I'd back myself to outcoach Adam Gase at the moment.
Yeah, this well, hold you to that. This one is just it's Bill Belichick. Jets are a bad team. Patriots are playing badly, and therefore you go for the coach who's going to be able to maneuver his team into a winning position, and that's Bill Belichick. Patriots by 6.
Fair enough. So that's the end of those predictions. Gareth, we already touched on that it was a bit of a wobbler last week. Just how much of a wobbler was it?
Did I get any right? I'm not even sure.
So this is by far, as a trio, our worst prediction week, in that none of us had a winning record. James and I did manage to go 7-7.
I thought you said I was like 4.
But Stuart Cole dipped under only one game back to 6-8.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which does mean that you retain your overall lead on the season. But we have managed to just claw a game back, so we're now only 5 games behind.
I genuinely thought I was like 4 or 5 games down, not going to lie.
Cool. Well, there's still time for us to catch up.
But most importantly, Stuart, before you close me out, James, the fantasy league is going particularly well for Mr. I'm Better Than Adam Gase. He's been turned over again, this time by Stuart, and his points for and against is looking pretty dramatically poor.
Every player was about half of what they were projected this week. It shows how bad it was.
It doesn't need anything more. I benched Dalvin Cook, and I thought he was going to be injured, but DK Metcalf bailed me out. But James, seriously, come on.
It's just tragic. But with that, we've come to the end of episode 10. So it's now November. We're in our 3rd month of podcasting with the NFL season fully underway. And as always, please spread the word about us. Come get us on our socials, which are Back the Playbook on Facebook and then Back Playbook Pod UK on Twitter and Instagram. We're also now on SoundCloud and YouTube. So if you prefer either of those 2 platforms, head on over, like and subscribe, as the YouTubers like to say. Just search for our name and you'll find us on there. For all of the content. So, goodbye from Gareth.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Stu.
Goodbye.
And a goodbye from myself. Next week we'll bring you all the latest news, reviews and previews. And I'm off to pray to the gods, young and old, that this is the week that my fantasy team turns a corner. Goodbye.